Okay, good morning, folks. We're going to go ahead and jump right into Chapter 14, which is the last lecture on HTML before we do a midterm project, and then we're on to JavaScript, right? So we are moving quickly through the course, and Chapter 14 is on video and audio, and a fair amount of theory, I would say, in this chapter. It's not as heavy of a hands-on chapter. Turns out they've made the they've made it not too difficult, believe it or not, to get audio and video into your websites. How this has been done historically has changed quite a bit. They'll even go through the book. There was an object tag that was used, and what was the other tag? Embed.
Object embed.
iframe.
Iframe is actually still the most common.
Yeah, and there's still iframes out there. And so a lot of different approaches to how to actually get video and audio into your page, but nowadays there's really just a couple. And so we'll show how to get video and audio in there. And then show how to make it responsive using Bootstrap. Of course, loading up the Bootstrap docs is just done with classes and not super hard. You're probably familiar with this, but there are a lot of different types of video files out there, just like pictures, right? Pictures, there's all these different types of images that are out there, and we went through with images, and we talked about pros and cons, like what are the advantages versus disadvantages. MPEG-4s are really one of the most common formats that are out there. OGG is kind of an open source. WebM is another common video type. So these are three common video types, and then audio types, of course, the ever famous MP3 player. Right, when I was growing up, those were the hot things, right? You got your MP3 players, and then AAC. I believe this was, if I'm remembering correct, an Apple format. OGG, WebM, Waves, and FLACs, and so very much like images, every video type and every audio type has its pros and cons. And they all were developed by different groups, different organizations. I'll share a resource of kind of the common video formats in 2022. And they go through here, and this is in the PowerPoint as well, talking about what is a container and what is a codec. In fact, if I jump ahead, looking for the slide, I'm not finding the slide on it. When it comes to a video is really an audio file and a video file, and they're contained together. And so when you see this concept of a container, this container is just the file format that holds both of those two things, a separate video file and a separate audio file. So that's just a definition or a term that you're going to see anytime you're talking about video files. You might hear of this term of a container, which is an audio and video data together in a single file. It also gives you the extension, right? So video files have extensions, and you can kind of see here MKV, MOV, AVI, just as an example of. Right now I'm recording using OBS, and I can kind of come onto my videos, and you can see it's an MP4 format. And so then there's a codec. And a codec, so a container, is basically a file that holds the audio and video together and gives it a format, or an extension, I should say. A codec is a piece of software that's responsibility. If you break down codec, its job is to encode and decode a file. And so, one second, I'll pause here. Why do video files need to be encoded? Well, as you might be familiar, video files can be pretty large. And so when you encode a video file, or you could say encode and decode, you could also say compress and decompress, right? So CO for compress, and dec is the decompression, right? So a raw video format is a very large file. And if we're talking about streaming this file or sending these bits across a network, you want to, just like you do with images, you want to minimize the file size but not lose the quality. And so a codec is going to do just that. It's going to compress the file so that you can store it on your hard drive, right, in a format that's not raw, because the raw format is a huge file. So it's basically compressing the file size down. And then when you go to play the file, it's the codec's job to decompress, in other words, get it back into some sort of raw-like quality, high-quality video, right? So depending on the file type, these different file types have different codecs that it's the codec's job to compress and decompress. I started by saying encode and decode, but I think better compress, decompress. Okay, so just kind of going through a list of popular formats. Again, this is a pretty heavy theory chapter, so just getting exposure, I think, is probably the best thing that we can do of what are the common video formats. MP4s, as I demonstrated, I'm using OBS. It is using an MP4. MP4 is one of the most common types on video available today. It is universally compatible format. MP4 first came into existence in 2001, became popular quickly. So it's kind of like MP3s and MP4s. MP3s for audio, MP4s for videos. It is compatible with several media players. YouTube accepts this format because it's a closed caption format. And then the list of con is video editing, because it ends up crashing most the times. And I will say that I don't have a lot of experience doing the video editing, but this is just one listed con by this resource. So take it for what it's worth. MP4 is very popular. .mov, another one. MOV is used in Quicktime. So kind of to go through the history, there used to be browser plugins, right? So, and I'm sure you guys have all experienced this when you go to a website and it would say, we can't play this without Quicktime, or we can't play this without Windows Media Player browser plugin. So, you kind of rewind 10 years and that was really common. You would have to have these browser plugins, which are just additional downloadable software. You go back even before that, right? Maybe 15, 20 years ago, and they would have what are called helper applications, where the video would load externally of the website. And I don't know if you guys remember that, but you would literally go to a website, and to play a video, like Windows Media Player would open up outside of the browser, and it would play a video externally, right? So that's kind of the evolution. QuickTime was a popular video player that was really popular with plugins. So MOV is popular with QuickTime. It was developed by Apple. And so a lot of times, like I remember this, like who developed this software, and MOVs, developed by Apple. MP4s, that's Motion Picture Expert Group, I believe, MPEG. If you actually look at its Wikipedia, it always helps me to developed by International Organization of Standard, the ISO. I got that confused. But moving through the list, and I'm not trying to spend too much time. WMV, this is anytime I see WMV, short for Windows Media Video, right? So MOVs are from Apple, WMVs are from Microsoft. WebM, this reminds me of their image format, right? So if you remember, WebP is an image format from Google, right, for web picture, and WebM, obviously, for movie. Remember, this is a little bit newer of a format, so same is true on WebM. Let's see if we look up WebM. WebM project, but hit the Wikipedia, and you can see it kind of has only been around for about 12 years, right? So if you look back to MP4s and things like that, they've been around a little bit longer. So WebM, developed by Google, open source, doesn't require lots of power to compress and decompress. Ideal for sending videos to a large number of people. A lot of pros. Small video file size. It says the only con is this video format requires HTML to play it.
Now, what do you mean by that? I mean, it has to be in like
a web browser.
Web browser.
Yeah. Yep. Now, and I've never tested that. Like, for example, a really good open source media player that I like is VLC. I don't know if you guys have, downloaded VLC, but this is a really good media player that supports all sorts of codecs and all sorts of file types. So if you're just looking for a good media player, so if you really want to test that WebM is not compatible with other things, I'd test to see if it's downloadable with or playable with VLC. But again, just kind of using this as a resource to get through the common file types. AVI, this is the oldest on the list and still amazing enough to be the top 10 video formats. AVI uses far less compression than other video formats, therefore usually comes as a larger file than contemporary choices. However, it's versatile, which is why it continues to remain adaptable. So AVI, Flash player, this is still a format that's been around a long time. If I'm making a video, I'm probably using a newer technology than Flash or AVI. And this is one that goes down if you've ever had an iPhone, even going back 10 years, it's never been compatible with Apple products. So that's a pretty big con, is that if you make a movie in Flash, and you want iPhone users to use it or iPad users to use it, pretty substantial size population, you're excluding if you're putting your videos in Flash. MKV is another one that's out there.
Historically, that's one's largely been Microsoft.
MKV, yeah.
Most common one.
popularity came in 2014 when Windows announced it was providing technical support. So the comment from Mr. Smith was, hey, it was kind of supported by Microsoft.
And it still is.
And still is.
That's actually what I record into.
It is as versatile as the popular MP4 format. So why do you record into MKV?
If OBS crashes midway, which happens,
Yeah.
it keeps my video. If
That's
I record
right.
to MP4,
That's
if
right.
it crashes midway, I lose everything.
That's right. And I changed that. I actually changed that.
Yeah. So I record it in KV, and then there's a remux option in
That's
OBS
right.
where I convert it to MP4 and then do my editing in MP4.
So, you know, if and when you're taking the written test on this chapter, a lot of the written test is around these file types and basically what are their associated codecs. You know, so just this is all relevant information for the written test, like just getting familiar with the different video types. MTS I don't think is one that the book lists. Panasonic, Sony, and several large firms mostly use this video format file. MTS is short for MPEG Transport Stream. It allows players to have access to high definition projects. Mostly you can find this video file format in Canon cameras. H.264, this is one that the book does cover. This file format uses lossy compression, which you remember back in our discussion on images, that JPEGs use lossy compression as well. So you kind of remember what happens there when you save a JPEG. You kind of lose some quality when it gets compressed. This is a popular video codec used in shooting videos. It is widely supported for the use of production and distribution of videos. Several camcorders record videos in this format, and also the standard for many Blu-rays. With H.264, you can send low-resolution videos across the web simultaneously. You can also encode high-definition movies for HD television. So you can kind of see this format can be good for those, I mean, two very different purposes. So it's a good format. It's also compatible with a lot of different players. Tend to be some large file sizes though. So MP4 versus MPEG-4. So at the top of the list was MP4, and then MPEG-4, another standard codec, which is MPEG-4, which is yeah. Yeah, I thought they were the same thing, and they are, so I'm not sure why this website is listing them different. Okay. So I just wanted to hit the common video types in a little bit more detail than what the slideshow has. There's obviously a lot of choices out there. They all come with pros and cons. As far as the common audio types, kind of the same thing, and let me pull up a little bit of reading out of the chapter that I'm going to reference, because they put it together a good table that I want to reference real quick. So if we go into chapter 14, we could take a look here at this chart. And it gives a little bit more detail. MP3, again, this is kind of what I feel like I grew up on with all of the MP3 players. AAC, if we remember, the AAC format is used by Apple. OGG is the open source audio stream, technically referred to as Vorbis, and WebM. So we got WebM for audio. We also have WebM for video.
I'd say Vorbis is most common. Vorbis is most common on Linux.
Right. I think they touch on that in here. So those are your common audio formats. Now when it comes to codecs, let's see here. Let me hop around just one second. There used to be a chart, and it would appear that they removed the chart from the book. There used to be a chart that would say this codec is associated with this, file type. And I thought it was just a good chart for reference because our...
I was going to ask, do you think it's in the 4th edition? Because I noticed that you are in the 5th edition.
Yeah, you know what? Let me go ahead and pull up the 4th edition. One second. Yeah, it's not in the 5th edition, which I guess the idea is, this is all software that's kind of happening on the back end. When you download a player like a VLC, it's going to come with the appropriate codecs. But I guess that's just, something that you should be familiar with, is that I've certainly seen these error messages on more than one occasion when you go to play a video, a certain file type, and it says, your computer does not appear to have the right codec. So what does that mean? Well, it means you don't have the right software to decompress that file type that's been compressed using some software. You need the right software to decompress it. So a lot of times what that means is you just need to download the right software. And in the older versions of this book, they would go through the different codecs. It's not covered as well as it used to be, but I guess that's okay. And so again, these are just the types of files. So when you see this MIME, I never know how to pronounce that. MIME types or MIME types. I'm not sure exactly. MIME types. Yeah, these are basically the types of files that can be sent across the internet, right? And so when it comes down to what are the different types of files that can be sent across the internet, it really boils down to the file extensions of the types of files that can be sent, and here's a list of those types. It's basically the video types that we've covered. So when you have a piece of software, right, and it goes to play a video, it kind of goes through this process, and you could think of this as steps. So the first step is, hey, what type of video file is this? So I need to look at the type of video file that it is. I need to determine, do I have the codec to play that file? So do I have the codec or not? If I do, then it starts the process of decoding the video and putting it to the screen. It starts the process of decoding the audio and obviously putting it to the speakers. And then interprets metadata, and metadata are things like closed captioning, and there's a lot of what is metadata. If you look up, the definition of metadata is data about data. So there could be all sorts of additional information that a video file might have with it, so it can interpret that metadata. Again, if you have a video and it's in a certain format and you don't want it in that format, it's not as simple as just right-clicking the video file and say, well, this is an MP4 and I don't want this to be an MP4 anymore, so I want this to be a WebM, and hitting enter and it working magically somehow. That's not the appropriate way. There's software to do it, and there's a lot of software out there that convert between file types, from one file type into another. Of course, you've got the premium Adobe software that's out there that you can pay for and work with all sorts of videos and video editing, but there's some free stuff out there as well. The one the book kind of mentions here is this micro video converter. That's just one piece of free software that's out there for you to use to convert file types. Now, again, this object tag is something that's been around a while. That used to be the way that we would play videos. This is a little bit more dated now. So built into the object tag, you'd have a type attribute, and this data would be where you would actually point to the video format. Nowadays, though, instead we use, there was also an embed object. You could see here's an example of embedding a YouTube video, and it's worth mentioning that if you go to YouTube and you click on a video, if they let you, first off, if they let you share and get the embed code, they're going to give it to you in an iframe. So this is kind of the more, I believe at one point YouTube was giving this out in an object tag a long time ago, but nowadays when you pull off of YouTube, but they're going to give it to you in an iframe. So just worth noting that there. But actually today, these are the tags that we use. So to get down to like actually coding something today, besides all this theory, we're going to use the video tag. And really just using this video tag, the hardest part about it is learning all the different attributes that the video tag has. And I would refer you to your book at page 467, and since I have the book open, we can look at a table of common attributes for the video tag. Here we go. 467. So thankfully, it's pretty simple to get video into our web browsers. Now, I did mention that in the old days there were browser plugins, but nowadays browsers have built-in players. So there's a built-in video player in Chrome and in Firefox and in all the major browsers. They're going to be able to read this video tag and read the source attribute and then look at a lot of these attributes. And these attributes are, for the most part, intuitive, I would say. Like you can just look at the attribute and know know what it's going to do. Like if you look at the source attribute, well, images have source, videos have sources. And so there is a source attribute. If you look at the MDN web docs, they actually have a source tag that's nested, which the benefit of doing it this way is that you can provide multiple file types so that if for whatever reason the WebM doesn't load, it plays the MP4, right? So looking at this, the controls is obviously going to give the end user the ability to maximize and play and sound and all this stuff that you're used to having the built-in controls to the video player. So this is a Boolean attribute that's right here, right? Displays controls for playing the file. You know, it's worth mentioning that not giving the user the controls to stop a video from playing was a pretty good way to annoy an end user. Right, most end users like to be able to stop a video from playing. It's also worth noting, you know, and different social media companies know this. Like you're ever scrolling through your Facebook feed and they autoplay videos, and when they first enabled that, like a lot of people got pissed off and they really didn't like it. You know, nowadays people just kind of conform, and I think they're a little bit more used to it.
There are some websites that are like that still. You know, you go in there and if you scroll far enough and there's an ad and it autoplays, or
Yeah.
you just pop on and it autoplays.
My experience is people generally find that a little bit annoying. So, you know, just keep that in mind, auto playing video. So, yeah, so it's really not super complicated to get a video, and let's go ahead and just do a quick demo of a video since it's not super difficult. So let's do file, open folder, homework, chapter 14. And we'll make a media folder. And turns out this Pexels has videos as well. And so let's see what kind of videos are out there. Okay, we got this hacker looking. Okay. This looks fancy. So let's pick a standard definition and different sized resolution. Let's do full HD, sure. Download selected size. It's going to come across in an MP4 format. So we'll go put this into Hacker MP4, and see how long it doesn't take too long to download. So let's just do the quick fill of the video. Now it's going to want to go ahead and put in a source. Let's go ahead and give it controls. And I'm not going to give it a width by default. Nested inside of it, I'll give it a source tag. Now this is an empty tag. And here we'll say media / hacker MP4. And because I didn't give it a width, you can kind of see. It's as simple as that, right? So point is, getting video into your web pages is not super difficult. You might be wondering, you know, when it comes to Get Bootstrap, what are the classes that we're going to put on videos? So let's go to content, Oh, I don't think it's under components. Kind of interesting. They've got they put it in a modal dialogue. So let's wrap. Here's a couple of other classes that we can throw on there. Let's go ahead and get started with Bootstrap and put in our CSS. And our JavaScript. And go forward. And let's plop our video tag inside of a modal. That didn't give me the behavior I would expect. So, okay, this is under modal videos. Let's do this. Div class container flu container. Div class of row. Div class of call for. Let's just put our video inside of a Bootstrap column. And we're going to have to get this thing under control because it is just too big. And so I think that's the root of my problem, is that this video is too large. So let's do a width, something like 250 pixels. And now we're getting
Would it be like when you do photos to make them responsive, is you set like a width and then a height auto or something like that?
there's a lot of custom CSS that you can do, and that's kind of what I'm going to have to default to because I'm not finding it built into Bootstrap. At one point I thought there was something. I remember doing it in the past, but it's not coming, it's not jumping out at me. So yeah, we would have to apply some custom CSS to get this to do what I want it to do. going back to the MDN docs, let's see if there's any other attributes. We covered autoplay, controls. Is pretty common. Controls list attribute, when specified, helps the browser select what controls to show. So if you want to show controls or not, you know, you got the controls Boolean attribute, but if you want to provide a specific list of controls, you can modify this controls list attribute with its different values. What else is pretty common? Again, height and width can be provided. There is a loop attribute, which will obviously kind of loop it back over from the beginning. Very commonly used are posters, so you could have an image poster to kind of get the user interested in clicking on the video. Preload, there's a preload attribute which is interesting. This attribute is intended to provide a hint to the browser about what the author thinks, what the web developer thinks, will lead to the best user experience with regards to what content is loaded before the video is played. So the preload of none indicates that none of the video should be preloaded, just the metadata. Auto indicates the whole video can be downloaded even if the user is not expected to use it. And then if you leave an empty string, it's basically the same as auto. Preload is set to different for each browser. So even though the HTML specification says, hey, they advise it to be the metadata. So, you know, if you want the user to be able to click and start playing right away, you might set up preload to auto to get that video to start downloading for a more seamless experience. But all in all, I would say this tag is not overly complex. It's just got a lot of different attributes that control your videos. Audio tag is just the same way. Right, so you got the audio tag, controls, autoplay. You got different sources. Again, for fallback, if it tries to play one and it can't for whatever reason, it will try the second format. One last thing I would like to do before I turn the recording off. So one neat effect that I've seen on various web pages is putting a video in the background of your web page. Whether you should or shouldn't do this is a whole topic of debate in itself. You know, should I use a video as a background? It is a neat effect, I will say. And here's an article on CSS tricks about various different ways to do it. You know, how to get a full page background videos. And it's going to come, of course, with the video tag, but then also some CSS. Kind of a more favorable approach, at least for me, would be kind of like up in the header, right? So you've got this video that's up in the header. And then there's different approaches, like, you know, the content scrolls over it. Now, what's nice about this CSS tricks articles is they give you both the HTML and the CSS. So this is one article that I will just share with you guys in Discord, and you can give some of these a try if that's something you like to do, for example, on your portfolios. And there's, of course, a bunch of other let's go ahead. I'll just do this first code example as the demo that they give. If you want to do a different one, that's totally fine. So I don't have my poster configured. It does have an ID of bgvid. Let's go ahead and give it a good source. And our CSS. So the selector is the video tag, property of object fit to cover, width 100 VW, height 100 VH, position fixed, top left 0. And now my video is playing in the background. If I start to add content, like everything else, there's always multiple ways to accomplish a task, and I just found a different CodePen article demonstrating the same kind of difference. Video background header, giving a simple div with a video inside of it, and styling that div, a little bit of CSS, a little bit of HTML. So underneath that, because what the last one was doing is it wasn't giving me my content underneath my header. So if this was my header, you know, and you didn't want, you know, you could style how tall it is, the content underneath wasn't showing. So a lot of different resources out there to accomplish the same task, and you know, you could set the height to be, you know, 50%. Get a header going in the background that way to accomplish that task. Okay, covered the video tag, covered the audio tag, the different audio and video types. I mean, again, I think in practice, you know, getting video and audio into your web page is not the challenging part. Maybe getting it, you know, responsive and, you know, exactly what you want, a little bit more challenging there. But that's the basics of those.